I'm Anna Urban, and this is the Wildly Different podcast. I'm going to talk about all the wildly different takes out there on ADHD, neurodivergence, spirituality, manifestation, the meaning of life, trauma, shame, joy, purpose, and of course, all the actionable, practical strategies from the super scientific to the super esoteric. Some episodes will leave you with more questions than answers, but that's exactly the point. Is ADHD a disorder or a gift? Are we here to hack our time or maybe even to reimagine what productivity looks like entirely? How do we get ourselves to do the things we say we're going to do, even when every cell in our body would rather do something else? Are we neurodivergent, or are we aliens from Atlantis sent here to evolve humanity? Are supplements a scam? What's the deal with ADHD meds, and why do we have so much drama about it? If any of these questions resonate with you, then you've come to the right place. Let's get untamed.
Hello, my untamed humans. Welcome to the Wildly Different podcast. I'm Anna Urban. If this is your first time here, welcome to the wild side of being human. Today, I want to talk about a concept that's been coming up a lot for me lately, and it's been swirling around in my brain. It's this concept of be, do, have versus have, do, be. It's one of those frameworks that sounds super profound, and it gets tossed around a lot in mindset and manifestation circles, and it does hold a lot of power, but only if you actually understand what the hell it means. Because if it's still abstract, it may sound really pretty when somebody else talks about it, but you can't apply it if you don't understand it, right? And if you can't apply it, then it just becomes another idea collecting dust in your brain. So today, I want to break it all down. I want to make it practical. I want to make it accessible for ADHD brains. I want to make it real. And here's why it matters, especially in manifestation work. Manifestation isn't about magically creating things out of thin air. It's about alignment. Who are you being, and how does that version of you naturally, I'm putting naturally in air quotes, naturally create the life that you want? And I'm going to talk about what it means to naturally create the life that you want, because it's not as natural as you might think it is, right? Be, do, have is one of the clearest ways to explain that. But it also shows us why so many people, especially those of us with ADHD, get stuck in loops of avoidance, of shame, or perfectionism, even when we're trying really, really hard. Even when we're trying really, really hard to change. So let's untangle it. Let's break it down. Let's make it open and make it usable. So the be, do, have model says, if I become the kind of person I want to be, let's say grounded, courageous, organized, healthy, whatever, then I will do the things that person does. And eventually I'll have the results that I want. It starts with identity. It starts with energy. It starts with mindset. It starts with embodiment. But most of us live in the opposite model, which is have, do, be. We think and we do a lot of this subconsciously, by the way, okay? And this is why I want to talk about this, is to bring the subconscious forward. If I have more time, if I have more discipline, if I have the right system, then I'll do the things I'm supposed to do, and then I'll finally be confident, worthy, successful, healthy, whatever. We try to effort our way into a new identity instead of aligning with it first. And I'm going to give you a bunch of really clear examples because I am the example queen. Let me give you an example, okay? Say you want to be someone who wakes up early and feels energized, because that's when you do your best thinking. But instead of being that person now, by shifting your identity and your actions to align with that version of you, you keep thinking, once I have more energy, then I'll do that morning routine and then I'll be that productive person. Raise your hand if you have fallen for this trap. I know I'm raising my hand, right? But here's the truth. Waiting to have the energy first is what's keeping you stuck. When you flip it around and you start with being, as in you choose to become someone who honors their mornings, you naturally start doing small things that match the identity. Maybe you go to bed a little bit earlier. Maybe you stop doom scrolling at midnight. Maybe you set your alarm with intention instead of hoping for the best, or setting your alarm with intention instead of dread, right? It's not fake, it's alignment. Here's another example. Let's say you want to be someone who works out, right? You want to, because really what that boils down to is like being someone who feels strong, who feels energized, who feels healthy, not just for aesthetics, but because you want to feel powerful in your body. In the be, do, have model, you start with that identity. You decide, I am someone who honors and cares for their body. And from that place, you might do things like prep nourishing meals, join a gym, move your body in ways that feel good. And yes, maybe even show up to that yoga class that you've been thinking about showing up to, right? But the action flows from identity, not from shame. Eventually, you have the physical health, the strength, or the confidence that you were looking for, but not because you hustled your way there, but because you aligned with it first. You don't have to have the energy when you show up as someone who is strong, who is persistent, who is determined. Do you see the difference? Okay, so this is where most people get tripped up. You're like, okay, cool, Anna, I get the model. I want to be someone who is strong, energized, grounded, powerful, but like, I'm not that person. Not even close. I feel like a soggy, overwhelmed raccoon who just crawled out of a trash fire. So now what? This right here, thank you for your honesty. This right here is the part that makes people abandon the model. Because if you try to force yourself to believe, I am powerful, when inside you feel like Eeyore on day 7 of a depressive episode, it's not going to land. It creates cognitive dissonance. It creates that feeling of, I'm lying to myself and I know it. It's like standing in the mirror and chanting, I am radiant and magnetic, when your brain is like, girl, you haven't showered in 3 days and you just cried into a protein bar, okay? Like, let's get real. This is the exact moment where people throw up their hands and they go, see, manifestation doesn't work. Visualization is bullshit. This is where affirmations go sideways. Not because affirmations are bad, but because if the gap between what you're saying and what you believe is too big, your nervous system won't buy it. It'll file that affirmation under delusional and move on. So the trick here is to stop aiming for full identity leap and instead aim for what I call identity proximity, okay? Not, I'm a powerful CEO running a multi-million-dollar business, but I'm someone learning how to lead. Not, I'm the most patient mom alive, I'm Dr. Becky, but I'm someone who is building my capacity to pause. We're not faking it, we're bridging it. In fact, I heard this phrase, it was like, it's not fake it till you make it, it's believe it so you can see it. I love that so much better than fake it till you make it. Believe it so you can see it, right? A lot of people think seeing is believing, but it's actually the opposite. In terms of identity and personal development, it's believe it so you can see it, right? It's not about being dishonest with yourself. It's about asking, what's one tiny way I can get closer to that identity today? It's not a performance. It's not a facade. It's really a practice. So let me give you a real life example, one that came up in a coaching session recently. I'm going to change up the name and like the exact situation, but it's going to be a really cool story, okay? Let's call him Marcus. Marcus is a musician, super talented. He writes and records his own stuff. He's already put out 2 songs on Spotify, real songs, okay, fully produced. But every time he sits down to work on his next track, he gets stuck. And it's not because he's lacking time or ideas or even discipline. Like, he is showing up. He is making sure that he has his childcare all squared away. He's like, finding quiet spaces to work. Like, he's doing the things. But when he sits down to do it, he keeps getting distracted, right? And some of the things that he keeps telling himself, what I pried out of him from a coaching call was those first 2 songs weren't really that good. he downplays them, he picks them apart, and he had this fear that if he releases a third song and that one also falls flat, it'll just confirm that maybe he's not cut out for this after all. Okay, so even though he knows, because my untamed brains are super self-aware, okay? Even though he knows intellectually that making messy, imperfect music is a part of the creative process, emotionally, he feels like he can't afford to put out just another meh song. So he's been procrastinating. In our coaching session, he kept saying things like, I just need more urgency. I need a deadline. I work best under pressure because of ADHD. But that wasn't the full story. What was really going on underneath was the fear. It was the fear that this next song wouldn't be good enough, the fear that with even more time, even more experience, even more effort, it still might flop. And that kind of fear doesn't get solved with urgency. It gets louder with it. And I really just want to make this point clear because so many of us have adopted this identity that we've picked up from like memes and ADHD experts and blah, 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 where it's like, oh, we need urgency to do something. Sometimes, sure, like the urgency helps, like the concrete deadlines help. But how about even when you do have urgency, you can't get yourself to do the thing? It's more than just an urgency thing. It's the trap of have, do, be. Marcus was stuck in this loop. Once I have more pressure, more urgency, maybe a looming deadline, then I'll do the thing. Actually sit down and finish the damn song. And then I'll be a real artist. Someone legit. Someone who isn't just all talk. But here's the truth. That model will always have you chasing your tail. Because even when he gets more urgency, the fear is still there. Even when he does sit down to write, that voice is saying, this might suck. It's still right there with him. So the shift is this. What if you flipped the model? What if you started with being? Be the artist, not the confident, polished, award-winning artist. Be the messy, moody, questioning, scared shitless, but still showing up kind of artist. And when you are aligned with who you want to be, then it makes more sense to show up to the process, to fumble through a chorus, to record a shitty demo. And eventually, if you do that enough times, you will have exactly what you want. The confidence, the momentum, maybe even the success, but from alignment, not from fear. This is actually how manifestation works. It is science-backed. Manifestation is not some woo-woo mumbo jumbo. When you are manifesting a book deal or a record deal, it doesn't just magically happen. You have to take the action steps toward it, but you'll never take the action steps if you don't feel like you can actually be that artist or that writer or that parent. Okay, let me give you an example from my own life. My tax person has emailed me several times. Let's just say 3. It's more than 3, okay? But she emailed me many times about some things that she needed from me, okay? And I kept putting it off. Not because I'm lazy, not because I'm bad at adulting, not because I have ADHD, but because it's genuinely confusing. Like I didn't know how to fill it out, and I hate not knowing what to do. I hate having to figure it out on my own. It brings up that itchy, overwhelming feeling of like, where do I even start, right? So I procrastinate, right? Not because the task itself is so huge, but because the feeling that it brings up is, okay? Let me say that again. It's not because the task itself is so huge. For me, it was taxes. Maybe for you, it's going to the gym, or maybe for you, it's staying calm during your kid's tantrum, right? It's not the task itself that's huge. It's the feeling that it brings up that is huge. And if you want to get into emotional regulation, I have a couple episodes on that. Just like look at, I think it's like episodes 15 or 16 or 17, okay? Those are really good ones. Those are the things that's what so many of us are avoiding, right? It's not the spreadsheet. It's not the form. It's the feeling of confusion, the discomfort of being a beginner, the dread of possibly doing it wrong, okay? It's like we've got all these emotional junk drawers, right? It's the emotional junk drawer in your kitchen full of batteries, expired coupons, mystery cords, except this one, this junk drawer in our brain is, I'm bad with money. I'm just not organized. I should have figured this out by now. I have executive dysfunction, right? And just like a real junk drawer, the longer you avoid it, the more stuffed it gets, right? The heavier it gets. Be, do, have asks us to be someone who's willing to open the junk drawer. Not fix it all, not get rid of it, just face it. It's asking us to be someone who is willing to open the drawer, to be someone who can feel confused and still take the tiniest step forward. I actually did finally submit my tax stuff right before I recorded this podcast. I'm patting myself on the back right now because I'm very relieved to have that off of my plate. And that's going to be another piece of evidence that I put in my bank of like, hey, I am someone who is doing this whole entrepreneur thing, okay? Here's another even more vulnerable example of my life, something that hasn't happened yet, okay? Somebody that I am actively being, all right? I want to be someone who is a poised, grounded, eloquent speaker. This is like a really big dream of mine. Someone who can give a talk in an auditorium full of people, who can hold a mic like a badass and like have like really good stage presence and not say or like every 5 seconds, or someone who doesn't lose her train of thought, like who's like a good storyteller, who like moves people, right? Someone who commands the stage with calm, confident energy. I actually just got back from a conference and there were so many magnifiers for me there. So many people who like just had like such great stage presence, like who were such great presenters, right? I'm manifesting that version of me. I'm not there yet, but I am showing up. So what I'm asking myself is, how can I be that person when I'm still figuring it out? Right? I want the keynote talks. I want the big ass audiences. I want the TED Talk moment, right? Even thinking like TED Talk gives me like the heebie-jeebies, right? Maybe I'm not exactly Tony Robbins yet, but it's already happening. Just not in the way that it looks on Instagram for the Tony Robbinses and the Mel Robbinses and like, you know, all the Robbinses, right? This is where manifestation really does feel magical, because it's kind of crazy how things just start to happen when you shift into being. And listen, this is the part that like, you're just gonna have to lean into the magic, because I can't really explain it with science. I can only explain it with spirituality. I've been showing up on social media for years, at least, I think it's been 6 years at this point. And it was only this year, 2025, when I decided, you know what? I am gonna be a public speaker. I was really afraid of that identity, right? But I decided I am. I'm gonna be on a stage one day, I'm gonna give talks. I've been approached 3 separate times this year to speak at events. It's never happened before. And then I was approached 3 separate times. Paid events. 2 out of the 3 are paid. But the other one is just gonna be really super fun and like a huge audience, okay? The first one was a virtual event for a group of 60 women physicians, okay? That one I already did. The second one is as a panelist for a really big women's entrepreneur networking event in New Jersey that's happening in April. But like, I remember last year, I went to this event as a guest. And this year, I got asked to be on the panel. Crazy. That's happening in April. And the third, I was actually recently asked to be a guest speaker at a big insurance company about ADHD. Okay, it's literally a 30-minute drive from my house, and I'm gonna be talking to a group of 30 people. So not thousands, not a fancy stage, but it's still a stepping stone. And I was paid for that one. It's still the path, right? This is what nobody tells you about manifestation or personal development or whatever. When your vision starts to come true, it can scare the shit out of you and it can send you running in the complete opposite direction, right? But I want to be that woman on stage, right? But my nervous system is still like, excuse me? Excuse me? We don't know how to be her yet, right? I can't just look in the mirror and chant, I am the next Tony Robbins, and expect my body to buy it. Here's something else that I need to tell you about this whole process. That first event, the women physician ones, I bombed it. I bombed it. It was so bad. It was so, like, I'm telling you, like, cringe. It was so bad. I messed up so badly. I thought that I had 90 minutes. I actually had 60 minutes. Like, it didn't go well at all. And that could have been a huge opportunity for me to be like, boo, like, I guess I'm not going to be a speaker after all. No, I sat with the disappointment. I sat with the discomfort. I knew that, like, the person who reached out to me was, like, disappointed in, like, my performance. I sat with all of that. I sat with it. I didn't make it a part of my identity, okay? That's where a lot of affirmations and manifestation falls apart. If your nervous system doesn't believe it, it's just noise. So even in that moment when, like, I really messed up, I'm still choosing to believe that I am someone who is learning to be a public speaker, right? I'm someone who is learning to command an audience, right? Instead of forcing myself to be her in full, I am practicing touching her energy for a few seconds longer than I used to. And maybe that looks like pausing and breathing before I speak, or staying in my body when I feel the urge to rush. And I'm getting practice, right? Like, hopefully my next 2 events goes better than that first one, and I'll keep you posted, right? It's letting my voice get quiet instead of pushing through the adrenaline. That is how I be her. Not perfectly, not all the way, but enough to make the next action feel possible. And that's what be, do, have is really about. It's not pretending to be something that you're not. It's showing up for the version of you that's already becoming. So, if you are in this cycle right now, I want you to ask yourself, who do you actually want to be? Who do you actually want to be? If you drop all of the fear of, like, but I'm not her yet, who do you actually want to be? And then who do you need to be in order to have the things you say you want? Are you willing to do those things that will get you there? Can you surround yourself with people who are being more than they are talking about being? That's part of the reason that I created ADHD Untamed, is I wanted a place for ambitious professionals, for wild humans with big dreams, with ADHD, who were sick of being fed the identity of, oh, I can't have the life that I want because I'm too distracted, or I'm procrastinate too much, or that's just the way that my brain is wired. Bullshit. Bullshit. You are not broken. You're just running an outdated sequence. And if you're ready to fix that, head to the show notes for more details, for the link to join ADHD Untamed, because it will allow you to be that person that I know you can be. Stay wild.